Pledge of
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We welcome everyone tonight. Item 1 on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our August 3rd commission meeting.
I don't have any corrections.
I didn't have any changes either. I would make a motion that we approve the minutes from the August 3rd commission meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2 is Employee of the Month, Kellie Payne.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am happy to present our August 2022 Employee of the Month as Donna Archuleta from our Carbon County Sheriff's Office. She has been employed with Carbon County since November of 2018. I'm going to invite Donna up here along with Dave and Jeff. I mean, Sheriff Wood. You have an email, right?
Email.
From Jeff or from Cletus?
I printed it.
Okay, there you go.
No balloons.
Did you make one? I did. Oh, Sunday. I'll bring them to your house.
Commissioners, if I might read what Cletus wrote, he couldn't be here today, so I'm going to read off what he wrote about Donna and watch her head swell. So, Donna Archuleta has worked for the Carbon County Sheriff's Office since November 2018. Prior to working for the Sheriff's Office, Donna had over 10 years of experience as a patrol officer for the Helper City Police Department. When Donna started for the Sheriff's Office, she worked as a corrections deputy inside the Carbon County Jail. Donna has always went above and beyond while working for the county. Donna never turns down an assignment, whether she wants it or not, and she is always volunteering for extra duties such as Pleasant Valley Days, rodeos, and the demolition derbies. Even when stressed and or overwhelmed, you would never know it by her laugh and smile. There it is. In 2020, Donna started her new assignment for the Sheriff's Office as the Carbon High School School Resource Officer. Donna has taken this challenge and done great things. It should be known that during school hours, Carbon High School turns into a small city, and she is the catch-all. Several times we have heard that she is called by staff to get things done, and which aren't even in her job description. Donna is very loyal to the county, the Sheriff's Office, and the Carbon County School District. Her call volume during the school skyrockets, but she never complains. She writes great reports and is prepared for anything that comes her way. Donna has been a vital part of active shooter training that is held on a regular basis, and she takes her job very personal. Donna has created a great working relationship with school administration, teachers, aides, and all other staff. Students feel comfortable talking with her and trust her experience and knowledge and opinion. And that's from Cletus. From me, her direct supervisor, she's incredible. I wish I could clone her and just spread her out throughout the county because she's really good. She has most things done before we even ask, and she never complains out loud anyway. Right? But she's a perfect fit for that school. The kids that come talk to her just seem to gel with her, and she does a great job. And just want to tell her thank you, making my life easier as well.
So, of course, I have a few words as well. So the difference that Donna has made, our SRO program is pretty new to the Sheriff's Office. And Casey Alton's done a great job with it up until Donna took over for him at the high school. The difference she makes in kids' lives is huge. You walk through that school and talk to almost every kid in there. Every one of them knows her, but most of them know her on a personal level. And that means a lot. Meaningful conversation is huge, and Donna takes time for that with these kids. And so that's definitely what I view as an SRO should be, and she's a huge asset to the Sheriff's Office and to the county.
Thank you, Donna.
I will say this too, when I've been at the Derby and out around the community, you do see Donna, and she always does have a smile. So thank you for being a good representative for the county, for the Sheriff's Office, and for the schools too. You know, there's sometimes kids need to talk to somebody, and having a friendly face there is important. You may hear stories down the road where that meant something to somebody, but thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Donna.
Yep, thank you. Item 3 is our Super Service Award, Tina Grange.
Well, this person's not going to be joining us today. I just found out because she's super, super shy and she didn't think that she could do this in front of all these people. So on my way home from work, she's at work and I will drop off her award to her. So she always has a smile on her face, works really hard to make sure her customers are happy, and helps Jana with anything she needs. Jasmine is a kind-hearted person that will go out of her way to do anything for anyone. And it's funny to me that she says she's shy because she's waited on me several times, and you would never know it when she's working with the public. And I was really excited for her to win because she's actually been nominated 4 different times. And so she won by 4 different people. So people in the community recognize her, and we're just grateful to have someone like Jasmine working in the food industry. So Jasmine Cutkiss with Club Mecca in Price is the winner of our Super Service Award. And sorry she's not here.
Thank you. Now, let's jump ahead to item number 11, so Tina doesn't have to stay here all night. Item 11 is review and possible approval of an agreement of Phase 2 of the 2021 Forever Mighty Grant Roundabout Map Concept with HUD Collective.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
I never know what to put on those. So, commissioners, this isn't anything really new. This is just a new agreement between HUB, and anytime there's a contract, of course, we have to come before the commission. The 2021 grant was already approved to apply for the commission. We received that and went into an agreement with Utah Office of Tourism. The company that's doing the work for us, though, is HUB. So this is the Utah Forever Mighty Co-op grant that we've partnered with Emery County. This was a 2-to-1 grant, and we received full funding on this grant. So we've already gone through step 1. Originally, it was called the Canyons and Loop, or Cliffs to Canyons, or we've named it all kinds of things, but now we finally actually have a brand, a look, a feel, a marketing plan for the roundabout. And so this is the second phase to push out the design of the maps and things that'll go along with it.
I'm really excited about this. I think just working through it over the last little bit, and HUB does a great job with all the work that they do for us. So I don't have any questions or problems with this.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. HUB seems to be very favorable, easy to work with. Seems like Tina and her crew and Shani, sorry, seem to work well with them. So I'll
Maybe make a comment about the restaurant tax, and the hotel tax continues to climb in the county. So the efforts that you guys are putting forth in tourism and it's making a difference. So those
Thank you.
dollars keep going up. So I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement of Phase 2 of the 2021 Forever Mighty Grant Roundabout Concept with HUB Collective.
and I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Motion
commissioners.
carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tina. Item 4 is open seal bids for the sports court at the event center.
I think we just received one bid. This is from TD Sports West, and it's to provide 2,700 square feet of sport court high resilience response tiles for $17,545.
Tony, any
Yeah, just
thoughts there?
the reason we were requesting this is we've almost got all of the 3 bays out at the event center covered with some of the events that we've had, concerts and home shows and all that. We just wanted to have that whole all that cement covered with a little more safety. We've had archery in that far north bay. We've had kids running around there doing tumbling and that. We've had weddings. We've had a couple ladies slip when they're high heels out there. So this is more of a safety thing, long-term, that we'd have more tile coming in and have it all like the other two bays. And this would complete, all of the flooring would be covered. So I think it's a good thing that we have, and just complete the look out there for the event center. So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to acknowledge the bids and accept it.
did you have anything? Or?
No.
Yeah, so I would go ahead and make a motion that we acknowledge the bids. Glenn and I can review to make sure it's accurate and it covers the space that we need, and then issue approval to purchase.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 5 is consideration and possible approval to apply for the JAG grant. And I don't see Justin here tonight. Is anybody?
We do have a little fire up, and he's probably up on that. It just found out about it up Spring Canyon, so it's not very big, and they already have a helicopter on it. So
Yes.
Yeah, Justin's up at the fire checking that out. So this JAG grant is for our K9 program. It's what it's for. It's a $3,500 grant, no match from the county, and it's what it would be used for as essential items for the K9 program, which is a year's supply of dog food. That's about $2,200. There's K9 checkups, dog boarding. We're getting an in-vehicle cooling system for one of the handlers' cars, GPS collar, and anything else that's related to the K9 training and caretaking. As you know, we do have the 2 K9s, and we seem to operate them fairly efficiently through these grants. And they've been quite beneficial. The 1 K9 is in a new deputy, just got out of went from being a corrections officer to an LEO. He's going to the police academy now. And so his dog will be here with us for 12 weeks while he's up training to be a law enforcement officer. And then as soon as he gets back, he'll take back over with that dog, but it's his car that's getting the cooling system. So we have 2 dogs. They work great. We assist a lot of other agencies in our county with them, and we've had good luck. So.
Any questions or discussion? Have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the application to the JAG grant.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
You know, government loves their acronyms. JAG stands for Justice Assistance Grant. Just for public notice.
Thank you.
Through the yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 6, we need to open for a public hearing to amend the Carbon County 2022 budget.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we go into a public hearing for opening and amending the Carbon County 2022 budget.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll go into this public hearing at 4:44. Seth, time to you.
Yeah, I'll just talk to this for a minute. Each year we generally have at least one, if not 2, times where we open and amend our budget for the current year. Some of that is because we don't have all the information we need by the end of the previous calendar year for every budget item. And sometimes there's unforeseen expenses or new grants that we might have received that we need to budget for. In this case, I just want to cover most everything that we have in these budget amendments as far as proposed. The first thing is in our Fund 54, which is the airport. Last year, we constructed a snow removal equipment shed for some snow removal equipment that we had previously purchased. The project was planned to be finished by December 31, but there was a little bit of carryover into 2022. And so some of the expenses covered or came over into 2022. There's increase there of $210,000, and that was part of the snow removal equipment shed expenses. And a large bulk of that equipment shed was covered by grants. So most of that was covered by grants. The second thing I want to cover is we received what's called our Rural Economic Grant for our Economic Development Department each year. This year we weren't sure on the exact amount, and and so now that we have those numbers, we've suggested a increase to the budget of $200,000. So that, again, that's all grant money that we'll be receiving, but because we intend to spend that grant money this year, we need to show it as budgeted. Third item that we have is for the fairgrounds. There was 2 pieces of equipment that were purchased for grooming and maintaining baseball and softball fields. There was a $75,000 increase to the budget for the fairgrounds maintenance. There's also some decreases there in the budget, so it really only amounted to $43,000. That was the increase to Fund 26 for that equipment. For the it's our Fund 25, which is our nutrition program for the senior center. One thing we've run into the last couple of years with COVID, as well as inflation, there's been significant increases in their food costs and food usage. And so we have increased significantly year over year as far as what they plan to use on raw food for meals. There's an $80,000 increase to their budget to cover raw food for mobile meals and meals that they provide at the senior centers. There's a similar increase to the sheriff's department just to cover increases in food at the jail. And then our final item is that the end of last year, when we meet with our with PEHP or our health insurance provider, they informed us that there would be a large increase to our health insurance this year. We didn't budget for all of that increase because it was so late in the year. We'd already done our budget process before we had the final numbers on that. So there's a number of departments where there's small increases from $4,000 to $20,000 in their benefits, and that's to cover the increased cost of our health insurance year over year. And that's what I have. If you have any questions?
No questions? Okay, we'll open it up to anyone from the public that would like to come forward and add any comments to this budget amendment process. We'll have you state your name, and then we'll know who you are for sure.
You all know who I am. But for the record, I'm Jim Darter, and I wanted to comment about the budgeting process. It ticked me off to no end to be stalled on Old Wellington Road and then turn around and see a brand spanking new, it was shiny new, 10-wheel dump truck that now belongs to the county. Price City had a dump truck for sale 2 years ago. Now, that was not working out for Price City, but it would have worked out for the county. And I see a huge tax increase. I mean, I remember Mr. Briner coming in and saying, well, his mother only got a 17% tax increase. Mine was a whole bunch more than that, like 200-300%. $700 year before last, and we're looking at another $700 now, which was rectified down to $300. And so we're looking at this county is spending way too much money, period. Now, I recognize you guys are in a hard position and you study the issues, and that's what we pay you to do. and you get paid to make the tough decisions. But when I see things like a truck that could be had for $50,000 and the county turns around and buys a brand spanking new from somewhere else for a vendor, that's not cost effective, guys. And when I see and I see Larry Jensen leaning back on right over there on the wall saying, the county didn't raise your taxes, the cost of the value of your property went up. Well, I don't see that on my month-to-month budget. What I see is the taxes going up. Now, Casey approached us, Larry approached us years back. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? The county's coming up short. The county's coming up short. I haven't seen anybody, yes, there's been some cuts in the county, but every year the budget's going up, 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 up. And I'm saying that maybe we need a little bit more sharpened pencil, time to cut it short. Because I'm not very happy about that, and that's why I made a point to come down here today, because my taxes have gone up almost double in 3 years. And then I see this brand spanking new truck, and I was pissed. And I don't want to be vulgar or profane or anything, but when I know, and I didn't know about this truck was being offered for Price City. I was asked by a guy in San Pete County. He knew about it, and he says, I'm interested in that truck. Can you find out some details for it? So I did. I went and checked it out. And it was a DEF problem that was not suitable for anything that the city was doing. So they couldn't use the truck, so they were going to surplus it. But on the highway, moving around, it would be just fine. But the county turns around and buys a brand spanking new truck. I mean, it was so shiny, brand new, it made me sick. Because I know this was an opportunity that this county let slide. And I'm hearing more and more stuff about what this commission is doing. And I'm sorry, I cannot promote you to be reelected. Because we need to change some people here. We need to change this approach. We need to change what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Jim.
Jim.
Appreciate you. Maybe a couple of things to clarify there. County did purchase another dump truck. It was not a new dump truck. It was used and a pup. And the road department has a very aging set of trucks. And if you want our roads fixed, we have to have trucks that work. And so we surplused one of the older ones and replaced it with another one. It was bought out of Idaho. It was a used vehicle. I think it's a 2016 model. So wasn't cheap either, but we have to have those things. And then the other part, Jim, is just that there's a misconception in the public that we are receiving more money today than we was last year, and that's not accurate. We don't get more money than we did the previous year, and so the value of our homes that's gone up shifted the burden to the homeowners more so than the railroad and the power company and some of the other types of businesses that would normally help with that. So that's another discussion, but thank you for your comments. Are there any other folks that'd like to come forward and say anything? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It was close the meeting at 4:54. Item number 8, or excuse me, item 7 is consideration and possible approval of the amended Carbon County budget. Any further discussion or questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the amendments to the Carbon County budget as presented.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 8 is adjourn as the Carbon County Commission and convene as the Carbon County Redevelopment Agency.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn as the Carbon County Commission and convene as the Carbon County Redevelopment Agency.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So item 9 is a consideration and possible approval of survey area resolution number RDA 2022-01 for RC Solar Project. So, Chani, would you help us understand what that one is?
I'll do my best. I can't promise anything, no. Basically, this is the first step taken by the redevelopment agency in the creation of a new community reinvestment project area, which is the RC Solar area as indicated in Exhibit A out in Wellington. So it basically allows the agency to study that area for the RC Solar project. It's the first step we take. So I don't know if you have any other questions about that.
So it's once this area is established, a new solar farm could be put there. There's a lot of confusion on the last one that went through. The land that was there previously, or even on this one, is basically greenbelt, and I think the county collectively over these hundreds and hundreds of acres gets a few $100s in taxes. So if a solar farm is put on this land, the designation of that land is changed. So we go from a few hundred to several $100,000 in taxes. So if there's any incentive on that, we're still tens of thousands of dollars ahead by offering any discount. And the confusion is that the county is paying for this project. Just like this one, the county is not, the taxpayers are not paying for this. I don't know where these stories get invented from, but they're kind of frustrating. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this. I think these assessments help the county in the long run and the landowners that decide to lease to these developers.
Yeah, maybe just one thing to add is that this project is just north of the existing solar field. And one of the things that's required for these solar companies is a place to tie back into Rocky Mountain Power's power system. And this is a pretty good area because there's an area on North Coal Creek Loop that they can plug into. So
I think this is a good thing. It helps broaden our tax base and hopefully will help. So this comes in as new growth, but it can also help offset some of the taxes for our locals. Speaking exactly to what Jim Darter's talking about, shifting that burden away from the homeowners possibly and helping alleviate some of that.
I think these projects are well over $100 million, and so the taxes that come in takes that burden off the residents. So when the coal mines shut down, when the power plants shut down, when the larger companies fight their tax assessments every year, that burden gets shifted onto the homeowners. I think that's the frustration that people are seeing. It's nothing we've done. It's just the way that the economy works out and the way that larger businesses play the tax system. So any kind of growth in our area, again, helps the residents and reduces their tax levels. So I think these things are very beneficial.
I guess it should be noted too that day one they will pay that property will bring in more taxes because they pay a full percentage of their taxes. If it's $100,000, if we give a percentage of that back in incentive, whatever isn't part of that incentive goes directly to the taxing entities and is increased to the school district, Price River Water Improvement District, the county, and all of the other taxing entities. So right up front, they get additional revenue from making these deals.
And once the incentive runs out, if that's a 7-year, 5-year, whatever term that is, once that incentive runs out, then it's full tax to all the taxing entities.
Yep.
any other discussion? We have a vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the survey area resolution number RDA 2020-01 for RC Solar Project.
2022.
Or excuse me, 2022-01.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jenny.
Thank you.
We need to adjourn now as the Carbon County Redevelopment Agency and convene as the Carbon County Commission.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 12, consideration and possible approval of using Carbon County-owned water for commercial or industrial use. So maybe just a little background. A few weeks ago, the commission approved the use of 50 shares of Carbon County-owned water for use in homes that need to be built. And we've had additional concerns since that meeting, and what we'd like to do is spend a few minutes and kind of run through the water that the county does own, and Curtis Page, our county engineer, is prepared to kind of help all of us understand that part of it. And Todd, maybe we'll have you come up too. So Todd Thorne is our county what do we call you?
Lots of things. Director of Building and Planning officially.
Okay, so maybe we could even start off, Todd, with some of your comments about what we are being faced with in people making phone calls here to you and to us.
So on a regular basis, we get phone calls from individuals and developers asking about where to buy water. So we have businesses looking to locate to the county, and they're required to buy a water share based on their residential equivalent when you're a commercial business. And so they'll have to buy multiple shares depending on the type of the business they have. And then anyone looking to build a home needs to turn over a water share. So we meet with a lot of people wanting to build a home, and I'm trying to find just a single share. Some developers are looking to buy, 5, 10, 15, 20 shares in order to do multiple lot subdivisions, but they're unable to find someone who's willing to share or to sell them the water. And so we go through on a regular basis and give them information to the Price River Water Users Association to get a hold of them to see if anyone's interested in selling water. So it's something we get phone calls, 3 or 4 times a week of what do I do? How do I move forward with this? So I think this conversation is needed so that we can make some resources available so we can have continued development, because right now we're kind of running into an issue of being able to build homes without water being available.
Thank you. So the dilemma when those calls comes in is we're unable to help them, and the scary part is that currently we have a project that's estimated to be a $9.5 million project that probably would come here if they can find water. And we've worked now with them for about a month and have come up with dead ends everywhere. And so that's kind of what's spurred this conversation tonight on, is a possibility of being able to use our water that we own for more than just homes, to potentially use it for industry. And so, Curtis, if you'll help us understand, what water does the county own? Where's it being used? Is there extra water that we could consider using?
If I could too, just on your point too, this developer, this person that wants to do this project, they had advertised not only in the local paper here, but also on KSL for water shares, and nobody would sell, correct? Okay.
Okay, so I have engineers like spreadsheets. So I put together a spreadsheet that I'll share with you. I do want to recognize that this has been a pretty good size undertaking, and Todd's been involved, Barry's been involved, and then the commission. And so as we've tried to get to the kind of the bottom of what water do we have, where is it used, what's been allocated, what could be available. Let me hand this out to you. So let me just say one thing before we get into this very far. As we talk about the water, I may refer to it in acre feet or in shares. And in the Carbon Canal, they're one and the same. So 1 acre foot is a share. So in the top left corner of the printout, it says Price River Water Users Association. So we contacted them and they were able to just right away give us a list of the water that we have, the shares that we have. So we have a total of 443.7 shares or acre feet. Let's talk about where that's been allocated. So we have 357.2 shares that is not specifically allocated, but we use part of that. We'll get to that in just a minute. We do have 10 shares that are specifically assigned to Gelati Fish Pond. We have another 26.5 shares that is assigned to the Fairgrounds Fish Pond. And then recently, the commissioners made it 50 shares available. We moved the point of diversion to the Price River Water Improvement District diversion that could be used for residential. So let's talk about the 357 shares that we have that we can allocate as we see fit. In working closely with Barry Horsley and looking at our use at the fairgrounds, we determined that we use on average about 125 acre feet of water at the fairgrounds. Obviously that fluctuates a little bit from year to year, but I will note this, that in the past few years we have identified measures that we could be more efficient and save water, and so we actually anticipate over time for that to, our usage there to shrink a little bit as we become more efficient and more better at, as we become better at how we take care of our turf and different things. The next box. Okay, so let's pause for a minute and let's talk about the golf course. So at the golf course, everyone's aware that there's a front nine and there's a back nine. Now the front nine was built, or belongs to the country club. The back nine was built and is owned by the RecTrans district. And currently, and it always has been ever since it was built, those two, the front nine and the back nine, have separate meters and they're watered independent from one another. We contacted golf course, talked to TK, and they have meters on these, on their systems. And we were able to receive from TK, we received their usage from the year 2013. And it fluctuates a little bit, but I took an average from 2013 to 2021, and the average is about 161 acre feet. So on the back nine, we use roughly, on average, 161 acre feet. Now, the RecTrans, Recreation Transportation Special Service District, owns a spring there on the golf course, and it flows into a small pond, and then the water that comes from that is pumped into the system to water the back nine. TK also provided us with some flow rates, or some overall usage of what that spring produced. And you can see that there's anywhere from 108 to, well, I'll just give it to you. In 2018, it was 108. In 2019, it was 112. In 2020, it was 150. And in 2021, it was 103. These are all acre feet. So in trying to wrap my head around how much does that spring really produce that would be dependable, I felt like the 2020 year was kind of an outlier. And it just kind of, I don't think we can average that in. I think we're being more conservative if we remove that from the average. So the average annual yield for that spring is about 108 acre feet. So if we look at the yearly average water that's needed at the golf course, 161, and subtract 108 from that, we're left with about 53 acre feet. Question is, why do I bring this up? Well, currently, the golf course leases water from Blackhawk Coal. Plenty of water, more than they could probably ever use. But as things change in the future, we don't know that we can depend on that lease to continue. So if we look at future use for Carbon County's water, it would be wise for us to recognize that those 53 shares we might need to someday provide to the golf course to meet our obligation to the back nine. So if you look at the box that's labeled future use, we have the fairgrounds at 125, and then we have the golf course back nine at 53. And then I know we're always looking to the future and we don't know what that could possibly bring, but let's say that we were to reserve an additional 50 acre feet for unforeseen needs or expansion of some kind. So if we take the 357 acre feet or shares that we have and subtract out the fairgrounds, the golf course, and say 50 more shares for future need, we have a total of 129 county shares that are unused. Then if we look at the 50 shares that just a few weeks ago you made available, and we add that to the 129 unused county shares from this analysis, we find that the county has an excess of 179 shares. So I hope that makes sense, and I'll entertain any questions how these were calculated, if you have any.
I don't have any questions.
No, appreciate the information. It's obviously taken a little bit of time to gather all this and figure it out, so thank you for that.
To best of our knowledge, this is accurate. So the neat thing about being an engineer is now I can step away and you guys can figure out what to do.
Okay. So part of the challenge for us as we have industry that has interest in moving to Utah, we receive from EDC Utah a request for information that we can turn in a proposal to these companies of what we have to offer here in our county. And if those folks looking to move to Utah had interest in coming to Carbon County, currently we have no water that can be guaranteed to them for a water hookup. And for example, we've had companies that may have plans to build a $150 million facility, and they might need 20 or 30 shares of water to turn over to Price River Water Improvement District in order to get a water hookup for their facility. Today, we don't have anything we can offer them, and usually we only have a few days to respond to these requests for information. I think the longest I've ever seen is 10 days, but most of the time it's just a few days. So in an attempt to try to have something in concrete that we can use in entertaining these folks to try to get them to come here, we need the ability to have some water available. And we really have exhausted every angle up to this point, as well as private people who are needing water, they've exhausted it. Now, it's been our understanding from everybody who has been looking for water that price has never been brought up about how much they would offer to buy the water for. It's always, no, we don't have any water for sale. So every lead that we have that we can give them, they're turned away. So with the 50 shares of water that we already committed for homes, the question is do we dare expand that and use it for industry as well as homes? So our motion and approval a few weeks ago was only for homes. So I guess that's the question tonight and the dilemma. And thoughts or any questions?
Does this analysis take any, sorry to interrupt, does it take into consideration any changes in delivery rates just depending on the water year and the snowpack and that type of stuff?
The water that Curtis just gave us, those are actual acre feet that we've used. So if we were on a reduced amount, it would have an effect. Yeah, no, one of the schools of thought too that we've been talking about is in a drought, let's say we're at a 50% delivery, is it wise for the county to have double the water we need just so we can keep all of our grass really green? Or should we reduce what we're doing? And maybe it's been recommended that the soccer fields and the ball fields get enough water to keep them healthy with all the traffic on them, and the other grass areas at the fairgrounds, we could back off and that grass could look like everybody else's grass. So there's a lot of angles to this. Everybody that we talk to in any setting has differing opinions. Most opinions are formed, I think, by the personal use of the water that people either own or lease. And bottom line is if we can't come up with an answer, we're not going to have growth. We just won't have it. So I might open the door too. We have already talked about, I think in this setting, as well as many others, we have received some American Rescue Plan money, $1.9 million. We received that much last year, and we received the same amount again this year. A big chunk of that money from last year was channeled towards the sewer line project that's in motion on Ridge Road. The money last year was supposed to be used for either water, sewer, or broadband. So that's where we put it, was into sewer. That will open the door on Ridge Road for some major development without having to rely on somebody who's going to move in here to run several miles of sewer line to get tied into Price River Water Improvement District sewer system. So we feel like that's a real good use of that money. But the money that we're receiving this year, we're considering very heavily using a pretty big chunk of that to buy water over the next few years. And we're trying to come up with the best way to put the word out that we are interested in buying water that would help ensure we have a little more flexibility in those folks who come in and just can't seem to buy it.
And that water would be earmarked specifically for housing and or business development, commercial development.
Yeah, that's what I would think. It's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's important to point out too. There are folks that have water, that need water. It's a little disheartening to hear that some of these industries and other businesses that want to come in, that people won't even, I mean, like you'd mentioned, Commissioner, that they won't even talk about price. They just say that, none is for sale. So we're not trying to get in the water business by any stretch. We don't want to set prices by any stretch of the imagination. We just have industry coming to this area that fail to come here because there's not water available. At one time, we had 11 subdivisions being planned. They all need water. So, you know, people want to complain about taxes, but they don't want to sell water to allow others to come in and help share that burden. You know, the tax is set at 5.6 million. That number does not change. It's who pays that amount that changes. So I believe it's our task to do what we have to do to try to bring other industries in here, because the expansion's coming. I mean, we have so much growth and interest in our area. We have to satisfy this growth somehow. We have to help, and I think it's key to do that. So I'm open for suggestions. If people want to sell their shares and they haven't heard about this for some reason and they're willing to work with us, holler. I mean, we'd love to connect you with these developers and sell a couple shares here and there.
Are you in the public hearing comment?
No.
Okay.
So I think it's wise that we look at this. I don't think, you know, that I would have the appetite to get rid of all of the excess shares or proposed excess shares, but possibly a certain portion of them.
Okay. Yeah, and the idea here is to have some available as folks come in, and at the same time be able to purchase additional water, which would help increase the amount that's available. And if industry comes in and we can hook them directly up with someone who's willing to sell water, we would prefer doing that. We certainly don't want to be in the water business. We don't see another way to help get some growth occurring here to help offset the tax burden that our folks are having right now. Jim, do you have a comment? We're happy to have you come forward and yeah, come on up here so you can get on the microphone.
We're not going to go through that motion to change to it. Jim Darter again. I live on Spring Glen Road. Okay. You drive up and down Spring Glen Road, and we're talking water here, and I realize that this is a Price City issue rather than a Carbon County issue, but there are multiple leaks on the pipeline that feeds Price City. And my background, my dad was a master plumber. So I always keep an eye out for where leaks are occurring. When I see cattails growing between Spring Glen Road and the railroad, that tells me two things. That leak has been going there a long time, because you only grow cattails when you have water there all the time. So we're discussing county approach. We're talking about where we're going to get more water. Maybe we ought to look into how much water we're wasting. Now, I've been in contact with Price City, and what he explained to me that, I can't remember, I'd have to look at my phone who it was I talked to, but what he explained to me is the pipeline there is bell and spigot cast iron. And I said, you're kidding me. And he says, no. And he says, what causes the leaks is the pipeline shifts. People don't understand, because I've been dealt with this since I was in junior high. Pipelines are not static in the ground. It may look like a big pipe, but that pipeline's moving. With the railroad, with the traffic, that pipeline is continually shifting and adjusting. What happens is each bell and the spigot comes together, and it has a lead seal. And as soon as he said that, I said, what's the pH of the water? Now, we've all heard about Flint, Michigan.
Well, okay.
Now, my point is,
back up.
We've got water leaks in this county.
Okay.
When we start talking about where we're going to get more water, let's address those first.
It's a good point, but I can guarantee you that all the water companies are looking into this. This is not just
I see, Standing.
so.
You don't grow
Okay,
cattails
We
year in, year out by
not-
saying that the water leaks are
it's
being
not our
addressed.
line.
It's not.
It's
I'm
not our
aware
line.
of that, but I wanted to make this point
okay.
clear.
Thank you, Jim.
And mainly we're talking about Pry-wide and out county and whoever Pry-wide services. Pry City has their own water. They're currently not part. They're part of the conversation, but they don't require a water share being turned over for a new house at this time. So it's not their water that we're talking about. This would be out county and whoever else is on Pry-wide system.
Yeah, then we believe the industrial growth will not happen in Price City. It'll be in the county.
But I think it's wise that we all address the water concerns. I think that's a good point, but the focus is currently the outer unincorporated areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with all of them. Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
So I think what we're after is a motion to change the use or our ability to use that water for industrial and commercial users as well as homeowners.
And just to be clear, are these the 50 that we talked about previously, or to address this handout that Curtis made for us?
I think 50 is fine. It was a good exercise to help us understand how much we have and how much we need to make sure we keep. Give us some flexibility so that if we have someone come in that needs a little larger block of water, we may have to reconvene and do something there.
Okay.
If there's no questions, then I'll make a motion that we approve using the Carbon County owned water for commercial or industrial use.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Item 13 is consideration and possible approval of the 2022 continued property tax exemptions. Seth, are you ready for that one?
Yeah, I don't have too much for this. If you recall from our last meeting, there's a church that was requesting tax exemption on a 160 acre parcel in East Carbon. There's no buildings currently there, but they plan to build some. So we asked that the attorney's office review it and just get their opinion on it. I think Christian might have something here.
Yeah, I've done a little research on this, and what I've seen is that cases construing whether a charitable, educational, or religious tax exemption should be applied are to be what they say strictly construed. So there's a case from 1982 that's kind of the foundational case. It's in the matter of Loyal Order of Moose Lodge number 259 versus the Salt Lake County Board of Equalization. It states that the constitutional provision which exempts property used exclusively for charitable purposes from taxation is to be strictly construed, and that statutes cannot expand, limit, or defeat the scope of the constitutional exemption. So it says the dominant or primary charitable use must be either an educational or religious or charitable use. You can grant an exemption if another use is de minimis, but otherwise there has to be some kind of actual use in order to receive the exemption. So as I read this, it must be used for a religious purpose. It cannot be simply sitting there with no use whatsoever. So any property, regardless of which church may own it, or which educational institution may own it, or which charitable institution may own it, must use it. So if there's a field, for example, on which grass is planted, but there's no building on it, but it is used by that 501c3 company or nonprofit entity, that could still qualify for a charitable or religious exemption because it's being used. But where it's simply vacant property and there's no record of use or no detail of how that property is being used, we're required to strictly construe it. And if there's no use, I don't think you can grant the exemption. So that would apply to any church's property that's not actually being used in some way, or any charity's property that's not actually being used. So my opinion is you cannot grant the exemption here in this case at this time.
So if they owned 160 acres in this case and used a small portion, 1-2 acres for religious purpose, that smaller portion would fit the means, but the other remaining property would not.
That's right, correct. And if you found, now let's say they used 158 acres and 2 acres of it was, say they had a private commercial, they had a grocery store on it. That may still qualify them for a total exemption because you may choose to deem those 1 or 2 acres out of the 160 acres as de minimis. So you can grant an exemption to an entire parcel of the property if you find that the portion of the property not being used for charitable purpose or religious purpose is de minimis. But where it's the other way around, the most you could do is grant like the case Commissioner Martinez said, yes, you could grant an exemption for those 1 or 2 acres where the bulk of it is not being used, if those 1 or 2 acres were being used.
Thank you.
So just one more question, maybe to muddy the waters a little bit. Is this as of January 1?
Yes.
Most real property, whatever's on the ground as of January 1.
That's what governs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
So Seth, on your end, there's nothing on the property yet. There's no buildings or any use going on.
As far as we're aware, yeah, the only thing that we have is, at this point anyways, is the application. The application states that it's vacant land, but they plan to build some type of building sometime this year for housing. And then next year, it states that sometime next year they plan to build some type of monastery.
So the exemption changes when they get things built. I guess that for this tax year, it would not change, but it would could
correct.
change for 2023.
Certainly could for 2023. And I think traditionally, if construction's begun or a significant amount of construction's begun, I think you've granted, well, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but it just, in my mind, I think we have done that where a church has started to build or construction's been underway for charitably owned property, and it appears that's happening. You've granted it in those cases, and I don't see a problem with that. In other words, I don't think you've required completion or complete completion where it's been substantially underway and you can tell what the use is going to be.
So Seth, is this the only one on this agenda item, or is there all of them together?
Yeah, this is the only one. We approved the list quite earlier this year. I think we had 2 added in a previous commission, but this is the only one that we had to present recently.
So you got a motion to
Yeah,
deny?
I'll make a motion unless there's other comment. I'll make a motion that, if they start moving on this project, say in 23, that they could come back and we could readdress this. But I would make a motion that we deny the approval of the 2022 continued property tax exemption.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 14, consideration and possible approval of the 7th District Court security contract.
Commissioners, if I might speak to that, I don't know that you've seen that contract. It's really an addendum it's the 7th addendum to a contract that was signed 7 years ago. So what they do annually is just give us an updated contract amount. Contract amount this year would be $86,304. Half of that is attributed to bailiff security services, and the other half is attributed to perimeter security services. It's got the standard terms and conditions that every one of these contracts have. It does require Sheriff Wood to assign bailiffs in each courtroom when court is in session. It notes that the county has a statutory responsibility to provide bailiff services. Yeah, I believe Sheriff's reviewed this and is okay with it. So you just ask for your approval, and I have that original I can give you.
Just a quick maybe comment and a question. Is this the same amount as last year?
I don't know. I didn't go look.
Say it is. I think it is. If it's not, it's very simple.
Okay, next year I think we need to negotiate a little bit of an increase. And it's almost brought on by what the state's done to us. And I'm not poking at the state, I'm just saying we've had to increase the wages in the sheriff's office because the state has started poaching, recruiting officers. Very aggressively recruiting officers from the county and the city. So we may need to renegotiate that contract at least a little bit and get a little bit more next year.
Any other discussion? Did we already pass this one?
I'll make a motion to approve the 7th District Court security contract.
And I will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 15, open and public meeting training. Christian?
Okay, commissioners, this is the highlight of the year that you've been waiting for. You've only had this training once. You get this training once every year for every board you sit on, so you probably received it at least 3 times already, but we're required by our auditors to do this training. So we'll just do it, and there have been years past where we've done the training like the 23rd day of December because we've put it off till the end, and I remember doing that a few cold Wednesday evenings. So we'll do it real quick right now, but I do have a handout to give you. Okay, commissioners, I'll try and go through this quick and just hit highlights for you. The Open and Public Meetings Act, the purpose of the act is that the legislature, meaning you, for the acting as the county legislature, take your actions openly and conduct your deliberations openly. As you know, you're often asked to meet or talk about things, but it's not just actions that have to be done in an open and public meeting, but deliberations also. So if you are, in other words, the county commission cannot simply have a discussion behind closed doors and then announce their decision later. Both deliberations and actions have to be taken openly. All public meetings are presumed to be open to the public unless they are closed pursuant to authorization under this act. What is a meeting? A meeting is the convening of a public body with a quorum present to discuss, receive comments about, or act upon a matter over which the public body has jurisdiction or advisory power. So, what is not a meeting? Well, let's say one of you is asked to meet with somebody or meet about some issue that you're going to have to take action on. If you meet with somebody to discuss that issue and you meet with them just one-on-one, you're not acting as a quorum. So anytime 2 or more of you act or meet, that's a quorum. But if it's just one of you, you're not violating this law if you meet with somebody to talk about something over which you have power. So you can have as many meetings on as many issues that may come in front of you with as many different people as you want, as long as it's just one of you. What if you're asked to convene to discuss or to receive comments about something over which you'll never have any power, but you're asked to do that outside of a meeting? Let's say the Supreme Court says, hey, Utah Supreme Court says, hey, we want to talk to you commissioners about expanding the Supreme Court in the state of Utah. Well, you'll never have any say over how big the Supreme Court of Utah is, right? So there would be nothing wrong with you listening to, all three of you in a quorum, listening to somebody give a presentation on that. Now, those things don't happen, but sometimes you're asked to, you might be asked to meet with somebody on an economic development matter, and it might be over something which maybe they'll never need a zone change, maybe they'll never need a, because you have power over zone changes. Maybe it has to do with something over which you'll never have to give any kind of, that you'll never exercise power over. So in that kind of case, it would be appropriate to meet with them outside of a public meeting. I would urge you to, however, be cautious there, because you never know when an issue is going to come before you. You know, you might think you won't ever have to decide anything involving a private entity, but you might. So if there's any chance you might have to, say, approve a conditional use permit for them, or approve a zone change for them, or be involved in some way in their land use, or in helping them in some way, then you should have that meeting publicly. A meeting does not include a chance gathering or a social gathering. Now, also, let's say you get together with a quorum of you present to discuss something over which you do have some power. Well, that may not be a meeting if it has to do with the discussion or implementation of administrative or operational matters. So really, it's what we're talking about is legislative versus administrative decisions. So a legislative decision always has to be decided in an open and public meeting. An administrative decision typically can be decided outside of a public meeting. So legislative decisions are usually decisions that talk about what tasks need to be done, and they typically talk about tasks that are going to affect the general public generally. An example of legislative versus administrative might be, let's say you decided you're not going to spend any money plowing roads in the winter. You're just not going to do it. That would affect the county, the entire county. That would probably be a decision you'd want to make publicly here. Let's say, though, you were deciding, yes, we're going to continue to plow roads, but we want to use a different brand of salt that we lay down on the roads, or we want to use a different percentage of mixture between salt and sand. Well, we're not changing the job we're doing. We're not changing what we're doing. We're just changing a very minor thing about how we're doing it. And if you've already budgeted a certain amount for salt and you're just deciding which brand is best, that's really an operational matter. You wouldn't have to decide that here as a body. The statute says a workshop or an executive session may also be a public meeting. So a lot of times workshops are done for trainings. If you're just so is a workshop always a public meeting to which you have to give notice? Well, if you're just receiving training on how to do your duties generally, then that wouldn't be, that's not a specific subject matter that you're meeting over which you have power to make a decision. So if somebody wants to put on a new commissioner's training or a county commissioner's training that you want to go to, and it's just talking about the processes you go through generally, that wouldn't be something that you'd have to notice up as a public meeting. If you're going to have a workshop, or let's say somebody wants to if you're going to have a workshop or a work meeting about an issue, and you're just going to receive information from somebody, or you're going to talk through options, but it's something that you'll eventually make a decision on, that kind of thing would be an open and public meeting. A lot of people sometimes will talk about an executive session. There's no such thing really as an executive session anymore. There's either an open meeting or a closed meeting. And you have to, if you're gonna go into what they call executive session, usually that's just shorthand for a closed meeting, and you have to follow the closed meeting rules. Let's talk about meeting agendas. Agendas must be posted 24 hours in advance. And there's 3 things you have to do. They have to be posted at the location of the meeting, they have to be sent to the Utah Public Notice website, and they have to be sent to a newspaper. We're not required to publish the ad in the newspaper. We only need to give the newspaper a copy of our agenda and the date, time, and place of the meeting. That's something we've never had a problem with. We do that really well. One thing I think Jeannie does especially well is satisfy this particular provision of the agenda, is that you must, quote, provide reasonable specificity to notify the public as to the topics. So, for example, today, if we were just to have an agenda item that said water, I think an argument could be made that that's not specific enough to tell the public what we're going to talk about. But we lined it out very specifically in the agenda. What we're talking about is county-owned water and what to do with water the county may have. So I think that's something you do very well, is provide reasonable specificity of the agenda items. Can you go into a closed session on an agenda item, even if you haven't put on the agenda item that you might go into a closed session on it? Yes, the statute specifically says you can go into a closed session even if you haven't advertised that you might go into a closed session. But that particular item still has to meet the requirements for a closed session that we'll talk about. A topic raised by a member of the public may be discussed during an open meeting, even if it's not on the agenda, but no action may be taken on the topic. But you're not under any requirement to do so. So if a member of the public says, I'd like to make a comment to you, this is your meeting. You have no requirement to acknowledge the public or to it's not an open mic session. It's not an open forum. You have full discretion as to whether or not you're going to acknowledge the public on an item that's not on the agenda or otherwise set for a public hearing. What are some examples of things that you should always place on an agenda? Our procurement code says any contract which is over $5,000. If we're bidding any purchase anticipated to exceed $15,000, even if that's budgeted, the contract needs to be approved by you. Interlocal agreements should always come before you. Receiving reports from committees that you might form. Authorizing non-budgeted procurements. So we saw an example of that tonight. Sometimes we have to change the budget. If we're authorizing those procurements, those contracts should come before the commission as they arise if they're not completely within the budget. All ordinances have to come before you. Resolutions, and here's one I think that's important. If you want to send a letter of support or a declaration of public policy, say you want to tell President Biden that you greatly appreciate some legislation he's passed. That kind of decision has to come before you and you have to vote on that. So you can't simply say we oppose this particular federal legislation or we approve it. Either way, you have to meet and discuss and vote to approve any kind of policy declaration. Okay, let's talk about closed meetings briefly. You can't get to a closed meeting without first having the agenda, without first having the item on the agenda in an open and public meeting. A closed meeting requires a 2/3 vote of the members, and there has to be a roll call on it. The motion to go into a closed meeting must be stated in such a way that it states the actual reason you're going into a closed session. What are the reasons or purposes for going into a closed session? You can go into a closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. You can go into a closed session to discuss pending or imminent litigation, to discuss the purchase, sale, exchange, or lease of real property, including water shares. Go into a session to discuss security personnel or security devices, to go into investigative proceedings regarding allegations of criminal misconduct. If you're going to be discussing trade secrets or other information provided to you during a procurement process. Those are all reasons you can go into a closed session. You cannot pass a motion in a closed meeting. So really a closed session is really to obtain information that shouldn't be public. And then if you're going to act on that, you can come out of that meeting and make a closed session. Closed meetings have to be recorded separately. So even though we're in a closed session, we have to record that closed session unless it has to do with the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. You don't have to record that part as long as an affidavit is made as to what was generally talked about in that closed session. Recordings, any questions on closed sessions? Minutes of meetings. Here's kind of 3 things you need to remember. Within 3 days after holding an open meeting, we have to post online a link to a recording of the open meeting, either on our own website or a link to where they can go get it somewhere else. Pending minutes must be made available to the public 30 days after holding the meeting. So we've got a duty to get those minutes done within 30 days, and even pending minutes, even if they're not approved, must be made public. I think that typically gets done. I don't think you're ever past that time period, Lori. I've never seen that. Could happen, but yeah, that doesn't, yeah, so we get those real fast now. Approved minutes must be made available within 3 days, and people have to be able to receive a copy if they wish from Seth's office, or they can just go online and get a link from them. So they have to be made available online as well. Anybody can record this meeting. So if a member of the public comes in and sets up a camera and wants to set up a recording device, they can do so as long as it doesn't disrupt the meeting. Minutes must...
Question on that.
Yes.
If we go into closed session...
That doesn't apply to closed session.
Right. Do they have to remove it from the room?
Yes, you can require them to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious. I didn't know what the requirement was.
I think you can do whatever you need to make that closed session secure. So, electronic meetings. There's a new... Electronic meetings are really meetings that are held by Zoom because of COVID. A public body may not hold an electronic meeting unless the public body has adopted a resolution governing the use of electronic meetings. I can't remember if we've done that or not, but basically, if we haven't, we need to. And that says that it used to be that to have a public meeting, you still had to have an anchor location with a majority of the members there. You can now have an electronic meeting where everybody is remote if the chairman decides that's necessary for the health of the board. So we need to have a little ordinance authorizing that. Even if you have an electronic meeting, you still have to give the same 24 hours notice to the public, and you have to accommodate the public so that it can be at the meeting. An electronic meeting is not the same as an emergency meeting. You can have an emergency meeting if you need to. Sometimes we've done that for declarations, emergency declarations, where there's been a wildfire or a flood, and we wanted to make a declaration quickly and get that up to the governor's office. You can hold a public meeting without, so basically an emergency meeting is any meeting that's held with less than 24 hours notice to the public. So if you decide you have to do that, you still have to try and give notice to everybody, to all the commissioners, and you still have to give the best possible notice to the public. And an emergency meeting is not a closed meeting, it still has to be open. There is what's called an exemption to the Utah Open Public Meetings Act for quasi-judicial proceedings. So there might be times where you hear certain kinds of appeals or you have to make decisions, and typically that's with respect to employment things. You may be hearing an appeal for an employment decision or an employment grievance, where you're the next chain in command. And when you hear that appeal, you are allowed to discuss those kinds of things when you're sitting as a quasi-judicial body, when you're rendering a decision that might be reviewed by a district court in some way. When you're hearing a decision like that, you can deliberate in private and then come out and announce your decision. But that's really, before you do that, you contact me, but that's typically in the realm of employment law. Finally, a person who disrupts a meeting can be removed. That's partly why Sheriff Wood is here, right? He has he is authorized to do that. If anybody intentionally violates the provisions of the Closed Meeting Act, it's a Class B misdemeanor. If a judge determines that a meeting was closed improperly, the judge shall publicly disclose all information from the closed meeting that was legally withheld in that closed meeting, or that was illegally withheld. So I think that covers it. Any questions on the Open and Public Meetings Act?
You
All
need
right.
to sign anything, or we should have brought an apple for the teacher.
I should have. I can make certificates for you. But Seth, one thing that is required, and I'm sure you know this already, whenever materials are brought to you and made, and you're given a presentation is made, those materials are also supposed to be then thereafter made publicly available as part of the minutes. So let's put these as part of the minutes. I'll give you an unstable copy. And then when our auditors look at our notes, they can see that we did have the training. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
That's the last item. Any other things we need to talk about?
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.